Hey there, this video is to show you how to integrate the snap-in inventory system into the Epic third-person template. This video pertains directly to version 0.0.7 or later. Anything prior to this version, the items function drastically differently, and there are no data tables, and everything is done inside the item. All the variables are set there. So there are other videos that are quite helpful in the channel for this particular system. Those are all done on the previous version of the snap and inventory system. So just bear that in mind when you're working with the inventory system, any version that's above 0.07. And most of the principles are still the same, like how you added, new items and that kind of stuff. The only difference is what you're going to see in this video here. So just remember when you're watching one of those other videos, if you're looking at settings that don't exist in the system you have, it's because the items have been updated and there's some new features and containers didn't exist and that kind of thing before. So just keep that in mind, but the other videos are still quite helpful when you're talking about integration or going in depth on some of the details. The principles that we use here will be the same to integrate this into pretty much any existing project that you might have. Depending on how you've done things in your current project, there may be some additional changes you need to do or things you need to add and whatnot, but at the core level, this is how you would integrate it into an existing project. So this is the third-person template. I'm just going to hit play on this just to make sure it works. So I can run around, I can jump. Mouse buttons do nothing, tab does nothing, so this is just a basic project. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have this project open here. This is the snap and inventory system. I'm working in 4.1.8. There's a 4.1.9 version as well. Just have this open. This is directly from the launcher here. What you want to do is go into the snap-in folder, then go to the SI components, and we want the inventory system. Okay, so we right click on that, and we're just going to go to migrate. And just hit OK on this. Okay, and you're just going to choose the content folder of the project that you're migrating it to and hit select folder. And once that's complete, just hit close on the inventory project. We don't need that anymore. I'm just going to change the view here. Okay. And now you can see on the left here we have the snap-in folder right here. And actually, if you have the demo folder with it, you can actually just delete that. And future updates, it probably won't be there, but okay. So there are two parts to the system. One has to snap into your character so that your character has the inventory system attached to it. And the other part of the system is the part that attaches to the items. The two pieces work together in order to create all the functionality. And the reason it's done that way is so that you don't have to add anything to your code. You don't have to modify your character or integrate the system in such a way that it's intrusive to your current system. You can delete the system at any time and it won't affect anything you've done in your current game or your current characters or your current items. So that's the point of the snap-in systems, and that's to make it easier for every type of project, but it's also to make it so that it's not intrusive. It doesn't affect anything that you have. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is add the inventory portion to the character. Okay, the easiest way to do that is if you have your character, find it. Otherwise, I'm just going to click on it here in the editor because it's already there. I'm just going to edit it. Okay, so you can see all the basic stuff in here for the character. On the left side here, under the mesh, we want to add it under the mesh. So you can actually drag and drop the blueprint that we want. So if you go to the snap-in folder and just go down to the snap-in components, under inventory, under blueprints, we have the blueprint snap-in inventory child actor. Okay, this is a child of the core actor. We want to use the child actor for the one that we attach to our character. So you can actually drag that into your character if you want, and just drag it right into the mesh. Okay, so that works. You can also just manually, add child actor and select it on the right here. Okay, so once we've added that, you can expand this. And under the snap-in folder here, we have edit these. And you can see here that we have our ST, which is a struct inventory default values. Okay, and this is where we can set how the inventory system is going to behave in this particular game. Okay, so we'll leave that for right now. We'll go over these a little bit later, but that is actually all it takes to add the character component to the character. So if we go to the window and we click on viewport, we can actually see now there's a bubble around our character, and that's the inventory overlap collision. and you can adjust this if you want to here, just to make it a little different. If you want your overlaps to be a little different, you can also resize it if you'd like. Okay, where this red arrow is here on the right, and now on the left, this arrow is where the root is of the arrow. That's the point where the system is going to pick up the closest item that's closest to this point here. So it's not the character, it's not its feet, it's not the crosshair, it's actually the root of this arrow here. Obviously you're not going to see this arrow in game, but there is actually an indicator, a little green ball. If you want to turn that on, you can just turn this check mark here on, and then in game you'll actually see that arrow or that little ball appear when you're overlapping a valid item. So leave it off for now, but that's available. Okay, so we're just going to save this, compile it, close that. We haven't done anything with the items yet, but I'm just going to hit play. So now you can see right out of the gate here we have our 1, 2, 3, 4 quick slots there at the bottom. Okay, and if I hit tab, we have our whole UI already in place for us here. Okay, so obviously it doesn't do anything right now because we haven't done anything, but right away we already have the whole character part of the system done. Okay, and 1, 2, 3, 4 automatically work, so we're good to go there. Okay, so the next piece that we're going to need is our items. So we need to set up the items that we want to use. This video technically assumes that you already have items in your game. This isn't about creating items or anything like that. So hopefully you already have items. If you don't, I'm going to just create a quick one here, just to demo how this works. Okay, so I'm just going to create a folder here. I'm going to call it pickups. And in here, I'm just going to create a blueprint. It's going to be an actor. I'm just going to call it pickup parent. Save that, and I'm going to create a child of it and just call it pickup assault rifle. Okay, and now if we go in here, you can see there's nothing in here, obviously. And if we go to the parent, there's nothing in here either. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a skeletal mesh. I'm going to call it item mesh. You can call it whatever you want. The important part here is you make this the root. Okay, it has to be the root of the item. Okay, save that, compile that. Okay, and then I'm not going to set any meshes here or anything for it right now because this is the parent, so it doesn't need a mesh. But my assault rifle probably does because, well, we want to know what it looks like, right? So if I go to the viewport here, you can see there's no mesh for this right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to import a quick mesh to use. So the snap-in inventory system comes with some of all the example meshes and everything that's being used in the system, all the icons and that. So you can get the download in the Discord channel if you don't have it. Let's go to the meshes here. I'm just going to grab the assault rifle mesh and pop that in. Important to import a skeletal. System only works with skeletal meshes. Leave that blank. It'll automatically create one and create physics asset. So import that. Okay, and now we have our skeletal mesh. And we'll just give it a little bit of a color here and a little bit of a metallic look. Close that. Okay, so there's our assault rifle. Now if I go to my assault rifle actor, I can assign it a mesh. Again, this isn't part of the inventory system, so do your items however you want. Just make sure that the item mesh is the root component of the actor, that's all. Okay, and that's all we're going to do for the item here because we don't actually add anything to the item in order to make this work. Okay, but what we have to do now in the inventory system is we have to add an entry for this particular item. Okay, and the way we do that is if we open up the inventory system here, we go into structs_data, and we want to go into data tables. And this is where all of the items are going to be listed. Okay, so all of the default variables, all the default parameters for every item that you're going to have in your game, they should all exist in here. And the reason we're doing it in here is because you can actually just export this as a CSV at any time. Okay, and you can also just import them. So you can edit them in Excel or edit all the easy variables in Excel and then import it and then edit the more complicated ones once you get into the system. Obviously you don't want to be sitting there setting up red, blue, green parameters in Excel So it's easy to use a color picker for that, but from all of the basic stuff, you can actually just add the items in here. And if you look at the assets folder under DT items, you can actually get an idea of what that looks like. Okay, so you can see these are the default items that it comes with here. But you can change the names of these right in here, and you can change any of this stuff however you want. Right in Excel, and you can copy paste this. So it's a really easy way to back up all your items. And then when you're ready, you just actually have to drag that right into here like this, and it'll overwrite. You can see here, and now all the new items that I would have added are already in the system. Okay, so we added an assault rifle, so I'm just going to double click on this. Again, these are just the default ones. You can delete all these. You don't have to use any of these. These are just default here. You don't have to use the same naming conventions. You can do whatever you want. Okay, so we're going to use the assault rifle, so I'm just going to use what's already existing here. Under the first setting here, the item BP, that's the item we just created. Okay, because what's going to happen is this is actually going to spawn the item that you want when the game starts. So we have to tell it which item we want to spawn. So we created an assault rifle. So that's the item that we want to spawn. Okay, and then we're going to look through here. Does the item equip to your hand? It does. Can it be stored in containers? Blah blah blah. These are all the default settings that you're going to pick for your item. Okay, I'm not going to go through these right now because we're going to go through that a little bit later. But just to add it to the system, that's all you have to do. You just have to tell it what blueprint you want to spawn, what item you want to spawn right here. Okay, and then obviously you're going to want to set all these anyways. So if I go down here to the bottom, this is a preview mesh, just so when I see it in the map, I know what it looks like. I know what item it is, so this won't get stored anywhere, but I'm just going to choose the assault rifle as well. Okay, so I'm just going to save this. So we've created our item. It's the assault rifle, and we've added it to our data table. Okay, so we now have the inventory system talking to our existing item. So if we go into our blueprints under the inventory system, and this time we go into core, there's a blueprint here called BP snap in inventory item. Okay, all you're going to do with this is grab it and drag it into the map. Okay, once it's there, if you look on the right side here under snap in, under edit these, okay, we have a row name here. Well, we wanted to add the primary assault rifle. So if we look for that, it's right here. We click on that, and you can see just by doing that, it automatically populated that preview mesh that we see. So now we know what the item looks like, and there we go. We now have the item in our map. So if I save this and I hit play, there's the item there, and there's no icon for it, so that's why it's showing up as blank. But if I hover over it, you can see the assault rifle, all the stuff is there. Put it in my inventory, drag it off, and it all works as expected. Obviously it's attached to my feet because we haven't set any parameters for it to attach to my player because it's a default player, it doesn't have any attached sockets or anything, but that's working exactly as you'd expect it to work. The only thing I'm going to correct here is, not even correct, but just update so it doesn't look so silly, is the icon. So the item display icon here. The default icon it just ships with the inventory system. There's just no icon. That way it's just not so discombobulated there when you hover over it. So you can see now it looks a little better. It says assault rifle, there's no icon for it, but that's fine. And you can see that it equips. You can put it in either primary slot. And that's it. That's all we got to do to integrate the system. So we've added the component to the player, and we've added the item to our DT_items data table. And then once the items are there, we always drag out the same snap in inventory item actor into the map. And just down here is where we're telling it what item it is. Okay, so it's always the same actor that we pulled out here, but we just have to tell it what item it is here. Okay, so that's it. That's it to integrate it into your existing system using your existing items. Okay, so what I'm going to do now that we've integrated the system, is I'm going to go through the actual item settings, just so there's a better understanding of what each of them do. Okay, so right now we can see when we walk over our item, it has a no icon there, right? So that's just the default icon that comes with the system if there's no icon there to set. Okay, so we're going to go through and through the item settings and just explain how to set these up and how each of them work. Okay, so if we go back down to our data table and open data table items, we're going to use the assault rifle because that's the one we have set up right now. So we'll start at the top. So the item blueprint. This is the item that is going to spawn. So this is your existing item. Okay, so you probably already have a bunch of items, and that's fine. For this particular row, this particular item, let the system know which one it needs to spawn. Okay, does the item equip to the hand? So is it a rifle, or is it a bat or something like that, a melee item? If it does, put a check mark here. If it doesn't, if it's a hat or a vest or ammo, then obviously it doesn't equip to your hand, so leave that unchecked. Can the item be stored in containers? This means basically, can you store it in any of your inventory? If you cannot, when you try to unequip it, it's automatically going to be dropped to the ground, or it's not going to let you put it into an inventory slot. You'll have to manually drop it to the ground depending on how you set that up. So if this is true, then you're going to be allowed to drop it into your backpack or your inventory or wherever you want. Okay, so that's up to you however you want to set it up for your items. If you don't want people to be able to carry around multiple assault rifles, then just simply check that to false and they won't be able to. They can only equip them or drop them. They're not going to be able to store them in their inventory. Okay. Is this a consumable? So is this a health pack or bandages or anything like that? Only set this to true if it's a consumable. If it's not a consumable, leave it false. So this is an assault rifle, so we're going to leave this false. Okay. Consumable type. So if it's a consumable, what type of consumable is it? Is it ammo? Is it a health pack, bandages, whatever? However, if the item itself, in this case the assault rifle, uses a consumable, then you also want to set that here too. Not required. If you're handling this completely somewhere else in your system, you don't have to use this at all. This is just there for convenience. Okay, so if you don't set this, that's fine. Then you just won't be able to call back to the specific item in the data table. You'd have to do that in your own system for whatever ammo type it needs or uses or whatever. Okay, this is just there for convenience. You can see in the demo project how I'm using this to find out if I have ammo for the rifle or not. But that's not technically supported. That's part of outside of the inventory system. That's part of game logic, so that's something that you can handle on your own. But this is just there for convenience. So I'm using it, so I'm just going to say that this assault rifle uses ammo 5.56. Increase max weight amount. So is this a backpack, or is it a vest, or is it a purse or something? Does this increase my max weight that I'm allowed to carry? If it does, how much does it increase it by? And you just add the number here, 65, 20, 10, whatever it is. 0 means it does not increase weight at all, and that's important. Okay, so if it's not a backpack or something, make sure that's 0. Does this item attach to a player, or is it attached to another item? Okay, well this is an assault rifle, it attaches to my player. If it was a suppressor, it would attach to another item. Okay, that's very straightforward. Custom collision. So this is if you want to use custom collision for the inventory system to interact with itself, then you can set that here. Just make sure you go into your project settings and create a custom channel. Make sure the default is ignore. Okay, so when you create a custom collision profile for the inventory system, always make sure the default is ignore. Once that's set up, just come in here and choose it, the custom one here. The system will do the rest in terms of making it work with the player. Okay, this is helpful because if you're, for example, spawning projectiles, then the default of world dynamic is probably going to cause you problems. When you shoot the gun, it's going to hit the overlap bubble or sphere that's around the player before it ever leaves them. So he's only able to shoot 2 feet in front of him, which isn't very good. So you're going to want to set up a custom collision profile, which ignores everything except for the other part of the system, which is handled automatically. And that way your bullets will shoot through the sphere as if it's not even there. Okay, this is set for world dynamic by default, just so that it works universally with anybody that downloads a project. But again, if you're using projectiles instead of ray traces or mix of both, then you're going to want to make a custom profile for this. Item name, self-explanatory. This is what you want to call the item, so it's going to show up when you overlap it. You can change the color of what the name looks like when you do that. Font size, again, pretty straightforward. This is the display icon, so right now we have a set to no icon. That's the default that ships with it. If you wanted to have a specific icon, you could do that. I'll just show you what that looks like. We actually have icons here in the assets folder. So I'll say items, and I have the assault rifle icon here. I'm just going to drag that in. There you go, it's right there. Save that, and then when I go in here, I'm actually just going to replace it. Okay, and we'll see what that looks like when I hit play in a minute or so. And item to display when the icon or when the container contains items. So this isn't relevant because obviously the rifle is in a container, But if you create a separate icon, so maybe it has like a plus sign beside it, you can check the demo, it shows that. If you have a backpack that you drop on the ground and when you overlap it, you want to know if there's items inside it before you pick it up or not, then you can set that icon here. Okay, that way it'll switch to this icon if the container contains any items. Otherwise, it'll use the default if it's empty. Equip slot attaches to on the player. So if we said this attaches to the player, where does it attach to on the player? Primary, secondary slot, okay, hat, helmet, whatever, vest. Where does this item attach to? This is an assault rifle, so it attaches to the primary socket on the player. Okay, when I put the gun away, what socket does it attach to when I put it away? Primary underscore away. Okay, so this can be whatever you want. And these are updated easily, and you can call these whatever you want. If you already have existing sockets, then you can just rename these or add or remove however you want. You can do that simply by going to the snap-in inventory system right here, okay? And we're just gonna minimize this to make it easy. Under enums, okay, and we have sockets here. So here you can see item sockets, head, secondary, primary, and so on. You can just update these, add, remove, however you want. Okay, and same with the holster sockets. Item starting weight, and how much does the assault rifle weigh? It takes up 10 units of weight. So you can make that whatever you want, obviously. Item starting amount. So if this was a consumable, how many do you get when you first pick it up? 5, 10, 15, 20. And then the max. So what's the max that you can ever hold of that item before it creates a new slot in your inventory and therefore creating extra weight in your inventory? So if you have a clip of 30 ammo and that's the max for the ammo, assuming this was an ammo type, then every time you pick up new ammo, once you hit 30, it's going to create a new slot and take up an additional unit of weight depending on what a full clip would cost in weight. So if this was a consumable, the starting weight would be the full clip. Compatible attachments. So what attachments is this item compatible with? If it is an attachment, this should be blank. Attachments are not compatible with other attachments. And if this is not compatible with any attachments, so if it's a vest and you can't attach anything to it, this should be blank. This is an assault rifle, so it is compatible with the AR suppressor, flash hider, stabilizer, 2x sight, red dot, 4x, and holographic. One thing you'll notice here is the way I've labeled these, AR underscore, which means that only the AR should be compatible with these guys. You can add AR suppressor to your pistol if you want, and it will work. But that's just up to you and how you want to do that. Things like 2x sights, those can be shared among other items, so I didn't specify those, so you can add that to any item and attach it to it however you want. Stop simulate on drop. So what this means is if you have a helmet, for example, and you're standing on a staircase and you drop the helmet will roll down the stairs, obviously. If you have this checked, which I recommend you do, it will stop rolling after about 2 seconds and kind of freeze where it is on the ground. Because we're handling the system with overlaps, sometimes if something like, especially like a helmet, if it's round and it's rolling around a lot, that can confuse the engine a little bit on if it's overlapped or not, and it might show up and then disappear and show up and disappear if it's moving around a lot. So I just had to stop simulating after a few seconds of hitting the ground. Tooltips. These are pretty self-explanatory. When you hover over the item in your inventory system, it's going to show name, assault rifle, compatibility, AR, ammo, 5.56. But you can add as many of these as you want. You can add 10,000 of these or 10 or 5, whatever you want. You don't have to use these. You can delete these. This can be completely whatever you want. If you want to add another one, just hit add. Go ahead and add it. Recovery, whatever. Right? Doesn't matter. These are completely customizable however you want to add them. And again, as with any of these drop downs, if you just go into the system and go to enums, you can edit them all right here. Okay, so we have items, attachments, and then here under the tooltips, you can see I've just added a bunch of these here, but you can go ahead and just delete these, add more, whatever you want to do. Completely customizable. All the lists are under the enums folder. Okay, and we go down. Stat color, so this is name, compatibility, ammo, value color, assault rifle, AR, 5.56. If you wanted to customize that, you can make all the guns the same and make all the ammo red or something, whatever you want to do there, it's fine. Is this an attachment, this item? If it is, choose the attachment, the specific attachment that it is. If it's not, leave it to none. Where does this attachment attach to? The front, the mag, the grip, the sight, the back. Again, these are sockets that would be on your weapon itself. So if I have a front socket on my assault rifle and I choose front here, then this attachment attaches to whatever whatever I'm trying to attach it to, if it's compatible, it'll attach to that socket right here. So make sure this socket exists on your item, on the item's physical skeleton. If you don't want to use these particular socket names, you do not have to. Again, just go back to the enums, and then you can go into your items, and then you have your attachments here. Under attachments general, these are just the general descriptions. And then under attachment locations, you can just create the socket you want. So if you're calling it, literally if you're calling it suppressor, you can actually add that socket here. Okay, so that's simple enough to do there. Just make sure you update your item row here so it has the updated one. Okay, attachment description, as we just saw there, it's just a general description, like so flash hider, suppressor, extended mag. You don't have to use this. The reason it's here is for convenience again. If in your character game logic, and you can see some of this in the demo that this project ships with, but in the character game logic, if you're holding a pistol or you're holding an assault rifle, well, both of those guns can have suppressors, right? So when you fire that gun, can have logic that says, does my gun have a suppressor on it? If it does, don't play shot sound or play a different shot sound, right? However, what you don't need to do is say, am I holding an assault rifle? Yes. Okay. Am I holding a attachment for this assault rifle? Yes. Is an attachment a suppressor? Yes. That's one, thread of code, and then you would have to rewrite all of that for the pistol as well, right? Instead of having to do that, you can just say, well, the general description of this is suppressor, and then you can reuse the same code depending on whatever gun you have or however you want to write that logic. Again, this isn't required, but if you wanted to use it, it's there, so you can set it. And then under attachment fits, so as we saw at the top here, under compatible attachments, all right, we have some AR ones, and then we have some generic ones like red dot and 2x sight and 4x sight and holographic, etc. Right, so some of these are generic, some of these are specific for a specific gun. This is where, if this was an attachment, so let's say this was the AR suppressor, right? Well, if it's an AR suppressor, it only fits on the primary, which is the AR, because AR is a primary weapon, right? As we saw up here, it's a primary weapon. However, if I want this to be able to fit on my pistol as well, then I would add another one, and I would go, it also fits on a secondary. All right, so the red dot would fit on a primary and a secondary if you want to be able to put the red dot on a pistol as well. Okay, or anything else like a helmet or whatever you want to call it, right? So you can put a red dot on your backpack if the backpack has a slot for sight, because the red dot uses the sight socket. Customize this however you want. Because this is not an attachment, this is the assault rifle. Okay, you can see it's the assault rifle. I'm not going to set that because it's not an attachment. Additional 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These right now have nothing. It's just to make your life easier if you wanted to add extra things and call to them. Again, if you go to the enums, under items, you can have additional 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you go in here and just rename these, okay, so you'll be able to pull down whatever you renamed these to. Okay, but for now, obviously we're not using these for anything. And the preview mesh. Okay, so this gets deleted when the game starts, but this is just so that when you drag the generic item actor in, like this, you can see there's nothing here, right? You can't see what this looks like. So even if I was to choose like a vest number 2, if I have like 30 items in my map and they all have no icons, I don't know what they are. So it's not going to break anything, but it might get confusing for you later on. So if you set that mesh ahead of time, like I did for this other one, when you choose the item in the list, it'll automatically populate the mesh just so it's easier for you to see. But that mesh gets deleted as soon as the game starts, so you're not going to end up with 2 meshes there. And that is it for all of the item settings. So now that we've looked at the item settings, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the player settings. So what default settings do we have for the player that can change the way the system behaves? I'm going to go into my player. And from earlier, we added this child actor, which is the inventory system. And if we go on the right side here under edit these, we have our defaults. So max player weight. How much weight can my player hold? If you're using the container system, then what will happen is this will never actually update. If you pick up a backpack, then the backpack has its own completely separate inventory and its own weight. As we saw in the item settings, you can set how much weight that the backpack or the expandable item can hold. So if you're using the container system, then this will never change. This will always be your default inventory slot that's right in the middle of the screen there, and this will be the max. If you're not using the container system, when you pick up a backpack, then this will expand. So if you said 30 is the additional that the backpack provides, then this will turn to 90. Okay. Replace existing. So this just means that when you pick up an item and you currently already have an item in that slot, do you want the system to automatically unequip that item and replace it with a new one? If this is false, then the item will go directly to your inventory and it won't replace the current one in your hand. Drop heavier items when you're overweight. So let's say you're not using the container system and you have a backpack on and this is now 95. Well, if you take the backpack off, this is going to drop down to 65. But if you're already holding a ton of items in your inventory that adds up to 95, then that's not going to make much sense to the game because you have more weight than you can hold. So if you have drop heavier on, then what'll happen is it'll cycle through all your items in your inventory and drop the heavier ones until you're underweight or on par with the weight. If this is false, then it won't let you drop the backpack until you manually clear out enough items to make you underweight. Auto equip on pickup, make this false. Then when you pick up items, if they have a valid equip slot, whether it's full or not, if it's false, it will not equip it. It'll put it right into your inventory. Use containers. Again, if you have this checked off, then it affects the weight system, so this will always be permanent, 65 or whatever you have set here, and as you pick up things like backpacks or vests or whatever, purses, whatever you want to set to an expandable item, those will have their own containers that you can expand from the UI, and you can put stuff in there and manage those in there. So use pickup closest scanner. So the way this works is if you're overlapping several items, the first time you overlap those items, the little dialog is going to pop up and say, do you want to pick this item up? It's like a little quick pickup item. So I can actually show you that. Right, this little box right here, press F to pick up. Right, so when I first overlap it, that's when that runs. However, if I'm spinning in circles, so if I look this way, it doesn't update even if there was more items here. It actually wouldn't update until I overlap and re-overlap. So unless the overlap changes, like if I pick this up, then the overlap changes because there's a missing item now that wasn't there before, or that was there before but isn't anymore. The overlap has changed, and if the overlap changes, then this runs again. So it'll pick up it'll show the next closest item. However, if I haven't changed my overlap and I'm just sitting on the same 3 items, then this will never change no matter how many times I rotate around. Okay. If you want this to continuously change when you're rotating around, then what you want to do is turn on the pickup closest scanner. And what'll happen is when I first start overlapping an item, this will kick in and it'll start scanning for the next closest item. So as you turn around in circles, it'll start changing the quick pickup item to the one that's closest to you. So it doesn't work on your crosshair or your player's feet or anything like that. It actually works on the root of this red arrow. Show quick pickup indicator. That's very simple to understand. I'll just show you real quick here. When I overlap this item, you can see that little ball? That's the show quick pickup indicator. The inventory scan interval. So the inventory scan interval. So the way this works is how often it's going to scan for new items. So when I first overlap a valid item, it's going to start a scanner and it's going to keep looking for any new items that appear in my overlap. So if somebody was to drop an item right next to me, it'll automatically pick it up every 0.35 seconds. Obviously, the higher you make this number, the slower it'll take for your character or your player's system to pick up new items. But the higher the number, the easier it is on the resources of the PC. But none of this stuff is replicated, so it's all UI stuff, so none of it's going to be affecting the server. 0.35 is pretty good, so I left it at that. Menu blur amount, if you want the system to show a blur when you go into the menu, then you can just set that up there. So right now you can see there's no blur. But if I set this to, let's say 3 is a good number, you can see it's a little bit blurred out now. So, and it doesn't blur the menu, it only blurs everything behind the menu, just to make the menu slightly easier to see. Okay. Menu open sound, close sound, and move item sounds, customizable, set that to whatever you want. And as we talked about earlier for the items, this has to match the items exactly. So if you do have a custom collision profile, you need to set that here on the player. Use busy when equipping. Okay, so you can read about this here in the tooltips. However, just a quick example of what this is. When I go and I pick up an item that equips to my hand, and it's very specific to hand equipped items only, right? When I pick it up, you can see it just automatically attaches to my character. Okay, it attaches to his feet because we don't have a hand socket right now, but if you had an animation that played and you wanted only the item to attach to his hand when he picked up the item, that's when you would want to turn this on. Okay, you'd want to turn use busy when equipping on. Okay, so you turn that on, and what's going to happen is when you turn that on, the item won't actually ever equip to the player until you do an anim notify to tell the inventory system to attach it when you want it to. Okay, and that is it for the player settings. So what I'm going to do real quick is just add a socket to my player so that he can actually pick up this gun. So we're going to go to the skeleton of the player, and we call it the socket primary, and normally that's on the right hand, so I'm going to find the right hand. I'm just going to add a socket. I'm going to call it primary. And I'm just going to right click on this and add preview mesh, and I'm just going to add my rifle. And when he picks it up, we don't want it to look like that, so what I'm going to do is just going to spin this around a bit. Okay, it's not perfect, you don't want to play with that a bit, but that's fine for now. Okay, so that's going to kind of go in his hand right there like that. Okay, and then when I put it away, when I holster it, I want it to go on my back. That's usually where the primary rifle goes. So I'm going to find, let's see, spine 3, yeah, upper back area there. I'm going to right click on that and go add socket, and we call this primary underscore away in our system, so that's what we're going to call it here. It has to match exactly, so whatever you called this socket, then you need to make sure that your enum has that socket in it and it's set. Again, I'm just going to add a preview so I can see what it looks like. That's probably not where we want it, so I'm just going to bring that over, rotate that a bit. Generally when you put it away, the handle's at the top. Alright. Okay, that looks pretty good, so I'm going to save that. If I hit play, now when I pick up this item, it goes into my hand like I would expect it to. Because I added the socket there and it found the socket. And now if I put it away, it goes where I want it to on the back. Okay, and again, just a quick refresh, that's because I called it primary and primary away, okay? And if we remember when we looked at our data table, and we looked at the assault rifle, we said that it attaches to my player and attaches to primary and primary away. And that's why that works. So the next thing I'm going to show real quick here is under the widgets, widget inventory menu, and open this up. This is our menu, so this looks a little bit familiar. Okay, so we can see we have two primary slots, a secondary, a melee, and a throwable slot here. Just going to show real quick how to add an additional slot like this. Okay, so it's very simple. I mean, you could obviously just duplicate one of these and just copy and paste it and add another one if you wanted to look identical to that. But from scratch, if you go down to user created here on the left, okay, all slots are within scroll panel, okay, because they're all scroll boxes, that's why it's called that. So they're all panel widgets and they're all containing a scroll box. The slot ones can only contain one item though, so that's the difference between that and a container like inventory, which can contain multiple. Okay, so all we would want to do is if you wanted to add another equipment slot, you can put it under the equipment box here. I mean, you don't have to. You can just drag it in wherever you want. Actually drag it right into the equipment box. And let's say you wanted to add a second secondary. Okay, so now that's there at the bottom. Now that you've added it, if you go on the left here, you probably want to call it something so you can find it easy. So I'm going to call it secondary underscore 2. Okay, and you can see it's kind of squished there. So if you go up here to fill, it'll just space it out like everything else. I'm just going to move it up to the secondary area there. And on the right, as usual, we have our snap-in category and edit these. Okay, so do we want it to have an image? So this one has an S in it, right? So if we wanted to carry on with that tradition there, we just can paste that in there. Under our general equipment stuff here, under the item or attachment socket, this is secondary. So we're going to choose secondary. If it was an attachment for the secondary, then we'd also choose secondary there. So this is an attachment for this secondary. So it has secondary as well. Okay. Type num 1 is wrong because we already have a 1. This is 1 here, right? So we have, this is our second primary slot. our second secondary slot. So we want to actually make that 2. If we had 3, we would want to make the third one 3, and so on and so on and so on. And as I mentioned, this attachment here is our secondary 1 front attachment. Okay. If we wanted to add a front attachment to our secondary 2 slot, it would be exactly the same, except this number here would be 2. Okay, so they have to correspond with each other. Otherwise, you're going to have attachments attaching to the wrong secondary. Okay, which quick slot do we want this to take over? Okay, well, we can say 4. So when you put an item here, it's going to become the quick slot number 4. Is this a container? No, it's not. So when I put an item here, am I going to be able to expand it as a container? No, because this is going to be a weapon. Okay, so we can leave that, leave that, leave that. Default slot color, there we go, yellow, because the other one's yellow. It's not an attachment, it's not a quick slot, and it's not a container, so the rest of this we can leave. If you want, you can remove the borders on the right and left. I can show you what that looks like. So you can see here, this is the secondary we just added, and you can see the left and right borders are removed. Okay, and last, to add an additional attachment, as I mentioned, you can just drag another one of these guys in. Because I added an additional thing and spaced this out more, all my other attachments kind of moved. Okay, and this was the new one we dragged in here, so I'm going to call this attach secondary to front. Okay, and then I'm going to put that in front of my secondary 2. And on the right side, again, we don't want it to have an S or anything in it because it's an attachment, but you can if you want. You can put an A there, or front, or an F, whatever you want it to look like, or just an icon. This is just an image, so. And then here it's the secondary, and again, because the secondary for the second secondary, it's going to be number 2. We don't care about any of that stuff because it's an attachment. You can change the color though if you like. Okay, leave the borders on those. And this is the last part that's important. Attachment is it's the front attachment, and that's it.